Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's round 2 wrap-up of the preparation series. A very interesting few games which was capped off by a thrilling and brilliant encounter between the Cheetahs and the Sharks, with the Cheetahs edging the Sharks 39 points to 38. A really good performance from both sides. And a game where I think, the Cheetahs overall definitely dominated and were the better side, but you've got to give credit to the Sharks for a very good comeback and getting themselves back into the game. And I think this round was sort of characterized by some highs and some lows, because, I think if we look at the beginning and the Greek versus the Stormers, I thought, defense-wise was a little bit disappointing with some of the things we saw. I thought that defensively that both sides probably could have been a little bit better. And tackling just seemed to be a little bit down. It's difficult to go and get stats, because there are no stats available for the competition. But, it was a game where the Stormers beat the Greek was 38 points to 32, and I think, it could have gone either way. It was a really good fight back by the Greekers, and I think a really disappointing couple of referee decisions towards the end, which whether or not would have made a difference on the game itself. But yeah, I thought the Greekers were just a little bit hard done by, with a lot of 50-50 calls going against them. But despite that, a really good performance by them in Kimberley. And on the Stormers, I think, a couple of individual performances. I thought Ruan Nile played very well for the Stormers, and a couple of other players sort of standing up. But there's a big sort of question mark over a couple of positions. And what this whole preparation series is supposed to do is kind of show coaches and teams where their strengths lie and where their weaknesses are. Where do they need to strengthen? And I think, you look at the Stormers side, and for me, they've got to find a fly half. I don't know what they're going to do, but I think we can also come to the conclusion that Damien Willemse is not a fly half, and it's not his best position. And you've got Tim Sweel there, but he's decent, but I think not blockbuster. And Cade Voliter, you can see there's some talent there, but I just don't think he's anywhere near ready to play in sort of Rainbow Cup Pro 14, and he needs to be able to go and play some more sort of age group rugby where he can really sort of develop and establish his class. So yeah, I think there were a couple of big gaps within the Stormers. I thought Golden Masimba had quite a nice game there, which is quite good to see that the scrum halves, there are options in the Western Cape franchise. And the pack was reasonable, but some big performances by the Greekers as well. And I think it's a side which it's very difficult to go after the Greekers, go after the Pumas, go after the EP Elephants when they just don't play rugby, unfortunately. And that's the biggest thing that SA Rugby needs to change. They need to start finding more competition so that the Greekers and the likes are playing consistently so they can really sort of fine-tune their game. Because we've seen a marked improvement between the Pumas and Greekers from the beginning of Super Rugby Unlocked to now, which is inevitable because they're finally playing rugby and starting to put things into place. The Pumas versus the Bulls game, we've had quite a lot of high-scoring games, to be fair, in the week. And the EP Elephants were the only side not to score above 30 points, and even they managed 24 despite being down to 13 men for a lot of the game. Before we get to that one, the Bulls versus Pumas game, it was just another advert, first of all, of the sheer depth that the Bulls have, but also the power they have. And you can see that there's a blueprint that Jake Wallace is putting across the entire union. It is going to be big, bulky, powerful, and they are going to out-muscle sides, which sets them up perfectly for Europe. They're going to go over there and they're going to bully them. And I think, with the tactical finesse of the likes of Mornay Stain, losing Ivan Vazel is going to be a big loss for them. And it comes down to whether Ambrose Pierre, how can he work in his kicking game. But I think, working with Rita Priya, it's going to be a masterclass. That coaching setup continues to just sort of prove, just turning really good players into players that are underperforming and starting to bring their best attributes out of them. And what we saw the Bulls was some very good youngsters and a lot of depth in that squad. And I think, that is the reason why I think that they will go into the Rainbow Cup as one of the favourites for the tournament. In amongst, your Ulster, Munsters, Leinsters. I think the Bulls have to be regarded as potential favourites, even though it's their first competition. They are playing in Europe. There's a lot of experience in that union. There's a lot of power. They're bringing in some fantastic players. They're looking to bring in more. They're going to have Johan Goosen soon. Master Kutsia will link up with them. It's just going to be a phenomenal squad, to be honest. And I'm very excited to see what they can do at the Rainbow Cup. But credit to the Pumas, who looked dangerous and scored some nice tries. They're a nice side. Jimmy Stonehouse played a nice brand of rugby, and he gets the best out of his players. And I think, again, if they were playing more consistently, if they had more investment, if they could bring in some better players, they could be a very good side. And then EP Elephants, for me, took strides against the Lions. And I personally think a really poor performance by the Lions, to be honest. In a match where discipline was just horrendous. So many cards, 2 red cards, a lot of yellow cards. And to be fair, I didn't have too much issue with too many of the decisions. I think that the problem is the players are giving the referee decisions to make. And I know that the standard officiating has been a little bit subpar in South Africa over recently, but I always hate that literally every single game we watch, there has to be talks about the referee. There has to be something about the referee. It's always the referee's fault. And I hate that whole rhetoric because it's just too easy. It's too easy to sweep things under the carpet and just say, well, the ref had a shocker, therefore, and that's why we lost. Because it's not the case most of the time. But I did feel that with the Griquas game, I thought the refereeing was a little bit poor. But to be fair, I didn't have too many issues with AJ Jacobs' calls against the Lions and the Elephants. I just thought that both sides, discipline-wise, were terrible. They were terrible. And that's why it was such a horrible game to watch. It wasn't free-flowing. There wasn't a lot happening. It was incredibly long. And it was just poor. And I think the Lions, which is a young squad, with a lot of youngsters trying to put their hands up and trying to say, look at me, I can be part of the bigger picture. They didn't put together a team performance, and that's why they struggled. And they scored a couple of tries right at the end, which really, really flatters them. But largely, they were very poor. The EP Elephants, on the other hand, can take a lot of heart from the fact that despite everything going against them in terms of the cards and stuff like that, they played pretty well, and they rallied. And, they showed some glimpses of a side which could be quite exciting to watch. I think Peter de Villiers is going to try and create a nice brand of rugby with the EP Elephants. The problem is that you're looking at players who are sort of semi-pro and haven't been playing rugby for a long time. I mean, somebody like Josh Alderman, and he said that he hadn't played rugby for more than a year. He played the game, and you could see that in the fitness of them. Getting cramp, 40, 50, 60 minutes. They're just not up to standard fitness-wise, physically-wise. There were so many injuries and stuff like that, so they need to adapt quickly. So I think they've got 2 more games. And then they need to go into a proper hard and grueling preseason before any sort of next tournament because they need to get up to speed because at the moment they're just suffering physically and you can see fitness-wise they're just not there. And then the Cheetahs versus the Sharks, a brilliant encounter. Some fantastic individual moments. 2 very good scrum performances from Grant Williams and Ruan Pienaar. Ruan Pienaar, 37 years old and playing some of the best rugby he's ever played. The Cheetahs are very, very good. Scrums are pretty even. Their line-out operated perfectly throughout the entire match. Frans Steyn was fantastic. Huge boot on him. Roscoe Speckman, Clayton Blommetjies, they are such an exciting pair to watch. Where they get on their wheels and when they try to counter-attack, they find space, they can exploit space, they can get through tackles. There's raw pace. It's a really, really good team to watch. And the Cheetahs have always been a good team to watch. And Javi Fourie is just making them, once again, a team which just plays such nice rugby when they get going. So it's a big loss for South Africa Rugby that they're not going to be playing in a competition like the Pro 16. And the biggest thing that SA Rugby needs to do is find them a competition where they're going to play a high standard of rugby. Because we need your Frans Steyn playing a high standard of rugby. Your Andise and Sealers, your Opa Mahoja when he gets back to full fitness. There's some good players in that Cheetahs Union. Clayton Blommetjies, Roscoe Speckman. There are players there that could push for higher honours. But they need to be playing a high standard of rugby week in, week out if they are ever to stand a chance of being involved in box hit-ups. We saw that somebody like Oxen Chair made the move to the Sharks, and now suddenly he's on the Springbok radar. I think Joseph Dweb is another one which the Cheetahs really needed to keep. And if he had moved to another South African unit, I think he would have been on the Springbok radar as well because he was playing some fantastic rugby. But I also think in terms of the Sharks that they showed some nice depth there. You look at that least trio of Tembulani Boli, Pepsi Buthelezi, James Fenter, there's some good players there. There were a lot of players that were missing in that Sharks side. Probably only about sort of your Apelele Fassi, maybe Jeremy Ward, Hiron Andrew, Jedi Van Mesh. Those are probably your only sort of usual Shark starters. And yet they put on a very, very valiant display against a very good Cheetah side. And a very nice comeback as well. And I thought that, Werner Koch looked a lot better at centre for me. Jeremy Ward's a very good defensive centre. I thought Grant Williams played nicely. Moni Liebach was fantastic when he came on. He showed a whole different quality. And I think having him coming off the bench where he can cover fullback, where he can cover fly half, he's just such an exciting player. He could change the game. And he did really try. And I think if they had come back and won that game, a lot of it would have been down to Moni Liebach and the impact he had when he came on. But yeah, there were some nice performances from the Sharks. I thought the Locks were fairly solid. I thought the reserve front row when the Sharks came on, actually, after taking a punishing in the first couple of scrums, really stood up. And the likes of Malcolm Brai, Ntuthuko Mkuno, Fez Mbata, they grew into the game. Fez Mbata needs to work on his throwing, and I think Sharks still need to try and find a hooker, because I think that's probably the biggest sort of position for them, which is a little bit weak at the moment. But some very positive signs from both the Cheetahs and the Sharks camp in that game. What was just a very, very good game. It could have easily gone either way, and both sides would have been very worthy winners. So yeah, I think it was another sort of couple of games where you learned a lot, and I think EP Elephants Lions very disappointing in terms of the quality of rugby we saw, and not much we could take out of that. But some nice positive in the Pumas and the Bulls, a reasonable amount of positives in the Stormers week. The officiating continues to be a bit of an issue, but then thankfully we had the Cheetahs and the Sharks just to put on a fantastic exhibition of the type of rugby we can see in South Africa. Let me know what you thought of the series round down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video as always. Please do subscribe to the channel. My name is Steven, and I'll chat to you guys soon.